My ideas come from above, a higher source. I will be alive for a short time, but this energy was here before me and it will be here after me.
In 1992, a young man from Beverly Hills had an idea. A junior high schooler obsessed with hip-hop, Alan Alchemist Mammon wasn't sure exactly how, but knew that he wanted to express himself through rap music. Though his first attempt to participate in the culture as a rapper fizzled in failure, the experience would put the 15-year-old on tour with Cypress Hill and under the wing of DJ Muggs. With Muggs' tutelage, Alchemist would switch vocations from MC to beatmaker, and in doing so, find his true calling. In the ensuing 25 years, Al would develop a uniquely menacing sound and assemble a catalog of classics. Today, he continues to release a steady stream of collaborative and instrumental albums through his own ALC Records and is universally acknowledged as one of hip-hop's most celebrated producers. And it all started with one idea.
When did you first develop your relationship with music?
Like, we used to have like a piano in the house. I used to go over there and try to sound little things out. And I think my mom saw early on that I was into it. And so she tried to give me piano lessons. You know, piano lessons is not what's up. So I fought it, but I did it. So that was like the beginning of just like being creative, whatnot. And then we had like a little fake rap group when we were in elementary school called the Dope Poet Society. We like made hats with the iron-on letters like most young kids did. When I look back, you know, these white Jewish kids in Beverly Hills embracing, you know, it was the Beastie Boys. And I remember seeing them and just being like, wow. We're finding out one or two of them was Jewish or like white guys. What, they're on tour with Run DMC? They're accepted? Like that, all that shit worked on me as far as thinking, damn, maybe one day I could participate.
How did your parents' professional lives inform your own ambition?
My father was 7 brothers, 2 sisters from Israel. Grew up there, and he like was the only one out of his family that left and came to the States. He made his way out of nothing. So to me, that was always like a big motivating aspect.
Were your folks into music?
Yeah. My dad had his favorites. He liked ABBA, he liked Nat King Cole. He had like this really strange mix. And they had a record collection, you know what I mean? From the 80s left over, and those were some of my first beats.
So when did you start really like wanting to participate in hip hop?
My first stages were rapping. Just straight jacking your favorite rapper's verse. I would memorize a rhyme, change a couple of words, put my name in it. And then I would just be at the mall in Century City and the homies would be like, yo, wow, say that rhyme. And I would like say a rhyme and be like, yo.
When did you make the transition to like, all right, let's write real songs?
It was always just a thing we did for fun. Then I connected with my man, Scott Kahn. We were all doing graffiti, we were all being bad kids, we were all making rap. Scott knew this kid, Evidence. His graffiti name was Vane, and he was already rapping and kind of doing his thing with Will.I.Am.
Really?
Who was Will.I.Am at the time. And where we all connected was this club called Ballistics. Every Thursday night on Sunset at the Whiskey. That's the first time I met DJ Am. He was rapping at the time. Me, Scott, Evidence, Seth, who was Shifty from Crazy Town, Will.I.Am, and there's like a handful of other guys. But we would all kind of link up at this party every Thursday. And at the end of the night, they would always do a freestyle session. And every night, like clockwork, Will would win. Like Will is so talented and was as a kid. Seeing him now, successful, makes more sense than anything. But at the time, him and Ev were real tight and they had a group. Evidence lived in Venice.
Yep.
On 6th and Rose. His neighbor was Quincy Jones III. Evidence was like, yo, I'm gonna bring you and Scott to meet Q. So he brought us to meet QD3. That was some of my first times watching music be made. And that's when Scott and I we created the Hooligans. And Q took a liking to us. It was like, man, you guys are really dope. We kind of built our demo together, out working with Q, like producing with me and Scott rapping. We ended up signing to Tommy Boy. We got a meeting with Buzz Tone Management, which was managing Cypress Hill, House of Pain. And that day we met B Real, he was in the office, and then B Real executive produced us.
So you're in 10th grade. Are you going to school at this point?
Yes, kind of going to school, but we went on tour. So in 1993, the Soul Assassin tour happened.
Yes.
Right? We had got signed. We didn't even have an album out yet, and we just got thrusted on this tour, this United States tour with Cypress was on top of the world. Soul Assassins was like huge. The only bigger thing out of LA was Dre and what they were doing, Snoop.
What were your parents saying when you're like, all right, so we got signed to a label and check this out, we have to go on tour for 3 months?
I think they were like impressed. Like I remember they didn't really think much till I showed them like a check for like 30 grand or something. And then I remember my dad was like, oh, okay, let's making some money, all right, shit. Also, the label was like, oh, don't worry about it, the management, don't worry, we have a tutor that's gonna go with them and he's gonna make sure everything is straight. So we're like, cool, cool. The day of the tour starts, we meet our tutor. The guy shows up, his name was Langston. He walks in the tour bus, he's like, man, listen, just keep me high this whole tour, man. Make sure I got some weed. You guys ain't gotta do no work. We were like, hell yeah. This dude rolled with us on tour, just had a straight vacation, just became one of our crew members. We opened on the tour. It was like such a learning experience, getting out there. And I was on tour with some real MCs, you know, Be Real, Everlast. Those are some of my first days. Also going to record stores with Lethal, DJ Lethal from House of Pain. We'd be in like St. Louis, he'd like take me to the record store and he'd just be like, yeah, box up the whole jazz and soul section. We don't got time. He would just buy the whole sections and then he'd sit on his bus and I'd come in there and smoke with him. And he'll have the turntable on his bus, take it from sound check, you know, and he'll be like, yo, listen to this record, see how it just sounds good. Listen to this record, it just sounds like shit. Yo, listen right here, see the groove? That's where the breakdowns are. And listen, you can, okay. So like he was already schooling me on shit early.
Okay.
As far as like records, I wasn't making beats yet, but I was just a sponge. Like after that, it was over. Like that tour kind of clinched it. Like, yeah, if I could figure out how to do this as a career, you best believe there's nothing that any school or anyone's gonna offer me that will throw me off. A lot of the records I sample, the moment might just happen for 5 seconds. It just might be a 2-bar moment or an intro or an outro. And that's what we make the beat out of. And it's like the diligence of listening to all these records and waiting for that moment gives you your scope. There it is, that's the shit right there. I'm staying with that part.
From that tour, things eventually sort of go off the rails for the group. What happened?
We dropped the single, we had a video. I guess they didn't like the results they had from the single, Tommy Boy, and they just shelved the album. We had a whole album. This is when I was, I would say, sophomore, you know, high school. I started getting into beats because when we got our budget, I bought an ASR 10. Lethal took me to Guitar Center. That's how I developed my style. And after the tour, B Real moved to Venice and he had a studio in his garage, set up ASR 10, and I used to go there and make beats in the garage. And Muggs would come through and see me over there messing around and was like, yo, come to the crib with me, man. I'm working on a Cypress 3 album. And then that's how I kind of went from hanging with B to like Muggs saying, come to my crib up in Nichols Canyon in Hollywood. And I would go to his house on the weekends. I would sleep on Muggs' couch and we would just work on beats. He saw how like excited I was to work. This is after the Hooligans. I'm in high school. And I was really good with the ASR 10, so that was like my job. And you know, I had a good ear, so he would give me boxes of records and yo, go through records. And I would find samples and like pull them up on the ASR and maybe chop some or maybe make like a halfway of a beat. He wouldn't let me do the drums. He didn't trust my drums back then. He was like, nah, because you know, he was the man. And he's paying me cash, I'm living great. And I did a lot on that album. When it came out, I didn't really have a credit on it. I didn't mind because I knew it wasn't my position. I didn't have a name yet. And Muggs was paying me well, keeping me in the mix. And it was a great opportunity. And it all paid off because how you think I met Mobb Deep? Through Muggs. Success to me is to be profitable and do good through something that I love to do. think success is really defined by the person. I envy a person who doesn't care, who is just like enjoying every day, but just because the sun's out.
Are you still going to high school at this point?
I am going to high school.
And you're fully committed to like, music is my future.
I didn't really know still.
Oh, really?
I wanted it to be, but it was like something had already happened. I'd already gotten a deal. I've been on tour. I've done some stuff. I'm like, I'm not letting go of this dream. You already know I was hell bent on it, but now thinking back, I'm not. It wasn't for sure.
By the time he graduated high school, Alchemist had already failed once, but more importantly, he had discovered his true talent. A move to New York to attend NYU would endanger his professional momentum, but Al had made crucial connections, specifically meeting Mobb Deep, that would set up his second act.
I did 2 years at NYU. I was doing that little bit of producing for the High and Mighty or the Far Right Dilated. I was set up in the dorm originally, and we would just be making beats, trying to figure out a sound.
So how did you transition from that to starting to shop beats to artists that were signed to labels?
At the time, my parents were giving me, I think, like $1,000 a month to survive, to live. Like, here, we're gonna help you out. And I think at the time I was selling the weed with my roommates, I worked long enough to save 10 months worth of those checks, save like 10 G. I never would spend the check they were giving me. I didn't tell them 2 years later. And it was like, once I had like 10 grand in a bank account, I remember like calling my parents going, yeah, I'm good from here. I'm gonna try. And just, I always wanted to push off. Like I always wanted to feel my own weight. Like, man, it's a blessing in the world to have family that can help and be financially, that's the greatest thing in the world. But then it also made me wanna feel what it would be like on my own. I sat with the advisor who looked at my GPA and was like, all right, you gotta pick a major now. I was like, I don't really know what I wanna pick, but you know, I'm doing a lot of music. It's been fairly decent. I have a history before that I did. I showed her everything. I told her what was up. She was like, you know what? If you want to give it a shot and you think you could make it work, you try. And you can always come back after a semester if it's not working. And I was like, cool. And I was like, can you tell my mom and dad that too? You want to put them? I called them. Yeah, and even the advisor said, they were like, I don't know, you're going to stay in New York? I was like, yeah. And then after 2 years, you know, I pushed off and didn't go back to school. And I stayed in New York, got an apartment, and I just like, I'm gonna make it work. The first thing I did was I got a Cypress Hill remix that Muggs hooked up, Tequila Sunrise.
From the fourth album?
Yes, and it had Fat Joe on it. Those years, I was going on tour with Cypress every summer, 97, 98, 99, and I would roll with Muggs and kind of be his assistant, carry records, whatever they needed me to do, I was there. It was just like, I'm there.
How were you imagining your career sort of playing out over the next few years?
I didn't really know where it was gonna go. I just wanted to be a threat. Like I was now honing my production craft. And I'm not like some of these guys who are like, your first beats are the beats people have heard. I had a lot of time to develop my style. There was eras of me making beats that nobody heard except for probably Evidence, where it was like I was just imitating Premier. I didn't have my sound yet, you know? And it took me a long time to develop what I felt was gonna be like something unique, which was basically my expression as a producer. We're working with electronics. We're not robots. There's an immediate fight right there. Some people give in to the fight and just go, let's go, quantize, and just turn into a rap robot. You need to have something that's locked in, all right, but then be free with it and humanize your shit and give it like some type of personality that makes it unique.
Which beats were the ones where you felt like, okay, I have a voice?
I think Keep It Thorough. Once I started working with Mobb Deep, that pretty much changed everything. Like I can pretty much put my career on a timeline of before Mobb Deep, after Mobb Deep. Mobb Deep was a legendary group who I idolized before I even knew them. Muggs had worked with them on his album and told me, yo, when I worked with them, I met their young guys. They got these guys down with them, Infamous Mobb. It's like they're young guys. You're my young homie. You guys should hook up in New York. So we linked up. And then that led to Infamous Mobb saying, yo, come to the studio. We got to introduce you to Having P. They had just started Murder Music. the album.
Yeah.
So I know where they're at now, the studio. I'm down with Infamous Mobb. All right, cool. Now I would like always come there, and P would not be there. Havoc would be there. And then Havoc would be there, and they'd be like, play me some shit. And I had this one dat, played him a bunch of beats, and then he would be like, I like this one beat. So I would come back 2 days later or 3 days later, and then P would be there. And then I would play that same dat for P, and he'd be like, skim through, I like this one beat. It was the same beat that Hav liked. It was the realest. You know, a month or so later was when P called me and said, yo, bring that beat through, son. Walk in the room, and then G-Rap is just sitting there. You know, and I was just like, whoa. You know, it's like, of course, we grew up off of Cool G-Rap. And P was like, yo, you know that beat? We want to use that shit for G-Rap. Now, in retrospect, I think, like, if I had a manager at the time and was like, cool, wait a minute, and it was like, let me call my manager, and that shit might not have happened. I was so excited that I just told the engineer, like, where's the engineer at? Like, plug me up. And
So
I
there's
just
no
tracked
conversation
the
about
fucking
money
beat,
or anything?
nothing. This was the greatest opportunity. He just told me, put the beat up for us with Cool G-Rap. I was like, crazy, track the beat instantly. That's how that relationship started with Mobb Deep. And then that's why I feel like Keep It Thorough was a big record, because it proved I wasn't a fluke. I do doubt myself, and it sucks, but sometimes you gotta check yourself, and that can be confused as doubt. Checking yourself is good. Don't doubt yourself.
So once you get the Mobb and then the Prodigy records out, your name starts to really ring off in terms, you know, in a larger way in hip hop. What was the process like of trying to sell beats back in 99, 2000, 2001?
You had to be physically out there. Like, there was no email. You know, staying home and making beats was like the one part of it, but straight up running up in the studio, making my own phone calls. I didn't have a manager at the time, and it was like, so I would make relationships. As a producer, the ones I looked up to coming up, they all produced whole albums first. I think I was one of those guys, came in that next generation of producers who was kind of like a nomad.
Mm-hmm. Like,
okay, I need to be on as many albums as possible, and I need a name tag, Alchemist. Like, that was all intentional. You know, it was like, I want to be known. I want people to know I made this beat. As producers, we were like salesmen. I got a new batch. All right, cool. I got to hit up everybody this week because I'm trying to start a bidding war, because it was all about who's cutting that first half and when. Like, you want the beat? Cut the first half, because I'm about to go to see Puff. Puff likes that joint. He's working on whatever. All the producers, we stayed on our toes because of this, because we were able to hear what everybody else was doing, to hear your competition, to see what, you know, Rockwilder's doing. Like, he used to kick my ass every time I'd see him, and he'd play some beats, and like, he's here? Like, we'd walk in and be like, nah, I'm gonna come back another day, man. This ain't fair, you know, he's too good. We really respect each other. I remember some rough nights trying to play beats and just not hitting. Or they would just send you home and, you know, just make you work harder. As an artist, it's always hard to take criticism. It's like a nasty pill to swallow. It's bitter. It's like, fuck you, man, what? It's cool to feel that way at first, but I think criticism is important as long as it's people that you can trust, that it's a non-biased, genuine opinion.
How were you negotiating things like your rate? I imagine it's changing as you're getting more and more placements.
In the early days, it was all about an advance. That's all I cared about.
Getting the front half.
Again, it was just getting your, I didn't even know about publishing or any of that shit, honestly. And I think that's a blessing, because had I known about all that shit early, probably wouldn't have did so many beats that ended up becoming great beats. Because I might have been like, wait a minute, what's my split on the publishing? How much are they taking on the sample? Oh, hell no. You know what I mean? My innocence and just wanting to be dope and be on these albums, yeah, it hurt my pockets a little bit probably, but I wouldn't take it back for a million years, because I have my discography. I got to a certain point where it was like, okay, what's my future? What am I gonna do now? Now I'm here. Okay, people know me, did some cool beats. And that's when I went back to my old thought of, damn, all the people I looked up to made whole albums. I gotta make an album. And that's when it was my goal, when I did First Infantry.
How did that change when you went from being a behind the scenes person to then being the front facing?
It wasn't a plan in that aspect. It was a goal to produce an album in its entirety, and I didn't have anyone else who was like, yo, we want you to do this whole album. I was like, well, fuck it, I'll produce my own album. As a producer, it's always been a tricky thing. Like, how do you sell a producer as an artist? But over the years, like, I would always write every now and then. Like, I always think of raps when I'm making a beat. Like, it's the same way I'm imagining a bass line or a drum, I'm imagining rap always, you know? Like, Hold You Down was a loose record we made at the crib. I wasn't making it for my album, but then when it was time to work on the album, I had that, and it was like, this is catchy, and it's me, and all right, fuck it, I'll rap on it. Or I was already on it, I'm saying, we'll Make It a single, because then for Kachi, it was like an opportunity to promote me as an artist. It would normally be harder if you're a producer on an album, you know, otherwise, like, what are you gonna do, stand behind a rapper and be like, yo, 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 this is my shit. This is just me rapping, and it was kind of awkward because some people thought I was a rapper at first. But it took, and it worked. And Prodigy was on the first verse. He was as hot as fish grease at the time. And Nina Sky was just blowing up.
Was the market informing your artistic decisions at all?
I never felt pressure from the music industry to make something that was relevant. It was a great time because the people I was down with, the Locks, Mobb Deep, these are the biggest guys in New York. You know, Mobb always had commercial success being hardcore. That's how we pulled off Got It Twisted. We go to the meeting at Jive, and Pete picked me up and said, come with me to the meeting, man. I felt kind of weird about it. I'm like, it's y'all album. Should I really come with you? He's like, yeah, man, we're gonna listen to the whole album with the owners of Jive. We're gonna pick the singles. So we get to the meeting, Barry Weiss, Chris Lighty, all of us, we all sit down in this room. Chris Lighty goes, all right, hold on, before we start, I wanna bring in Who Kid. Who Kid is the ear of the streets, and I really respect his opinion, so we wanna hear what he has to say. At first, I was like, what the fuck is going on? Why is Who Kid in here? You know what I mean? What's going on here? So, cool. Play the whole album, every song. Have the Most of Them Boom, listen to everything. All right, singles, let's go back. They went straight to the Kanye joint and my joint. Straight to it. Let's just reevaluate those. We played the Kanye West joint. Barry Weiss going crazy bangers. And he said, my son loves Kanye West. Then we played Got It Twisted again, right? Everyone's listening to it. And then Who Kid stepped out of nowhere and was like, are you guys serious? This is a no-brainer. Are we really deciding? He said, one sounds like Saturday afternoon, the other one sounds like you're getting stabbed in a club. This is Mobb Deep. And everybody, and that was it. And I swear after that, I hugged that motherfucker. I was like, yo, you're the best, man. Like, I was like, he was just being genuine.
You mentioned We Gon Make It, and I know that was somewhat controversial record when it came out. What happened?
We Gon Make It, the way that happened was this dude, Ray, I think, I forget, he worked at Priority. They bought a bunch of beats off of me, like a 3-package deal, and I tracked a bunch of beats, never heard back from them. And so later on, when that type of thing would happen back then, I was like, yeah, I'm using that beat for something else. And people don't even know, I tracked that beat for Nas. After that, when Nas was doing the 41st album, he picked that beat and I tracked it to a 2-inch tape for him. It was gonna be his solo song. And then he left town, came back and they're like, nah, he didn't do it, Nashawn is gonna use it or something. And I was like, I took it back. I also played We Gon Make It for Jay-Z in person.
That could have been a Nas record, it could have been a Jay-Z.
Could have been a Nas record, could have been a Jay record. Very close, yes.
So Kiss gets the beat, makes the song, and then were you completely surprised when Razkaz comes out of the woodwork?
I don't remember how it went. It was kind of like, oh man, you know, kind of a letdown on how it all unfolded, but Kiss record was so big, and when you look back in history, it was meant to be. Yeah, I'll never forget the day that Kiss played the verse. I was over there, I went up to Yonkers. And the first line, it was already like, holy shit.
So in 2007, you did what would become the first of a series of collaborative albums that you've continued to do to this day. How did you end up deciding you and Prodigy were gonna work on The Return of the Mac together?
He used to damn near live with me at that time. Like, he would come through every day, stay late, and leave powdered white donut wrappers everywhere and just like leave a mess and write rhymes, and we would watch YouTube stuff for hours. He used to record stuff off of YouTube with his VHS camera because he's like, some of this info is gonna go away. Like, P was insane. We did a couple songs and it started going good, and that was the first time that I noticed P trusted me all the way. Like, being able to do that whole project and have P meant a lot to me at the time. It was just gonna be a mixtape. And then it was just like, we gotta put this out for real. I wasn't on my A game yet as far as putting together albums the way I think I am now.
Did it change how you thought about production or making music?
Yeah, there's sections of a song, right? And you put in your magnifying glass and you make each section special, right? An album is a big song, and there's moments everywhere throughout that album, just like there's moments in a song. I started looking at it like that. Like, all right, if I could keep a song interesting, then I gotta be able to keep an album interesting and treat it like one big fucking song. Producing is kind of like psychology, more than technology. It's like a lot of it is like knowing how to communicate with an artist in order to get the best version of them out of them. You know, you're not gonna draw blood from a rock. You can't come in there and force somebody to do something. That's never been my technique. I want them to stay in their confident bag. I don't want them to start losing their confidence. I may be like, yo, listen to this last take we did a couple of takes ago. See that part? I love that part. Man, see the tone you had there? That's what we're trying to get.
Around that time also, the whole music industry starts to change.
Yeah.
How were you thinking about that as this is very beginning of streaming? And
I was like skeptical about it all. The music industry kind of burnt me out after like my run of doing Hold You Down, and then having success as an artist, and then coming back years later with my follow-up album and trying to do it bigger and making all these fucking mistakes that I'm like, damn, I wish I could have done it differently, you know?
What do you mean?
Like, I think every artist has their version of this if they make it through the storm. First album came out, had success, didn't expect it. Then I arrived. Mobb is on top, I'm here, I'm an artist now. Like, I'm fine. So many things happening, and I took 2-3 years. You know what I mean? And it was way too long. And at that point, the sound was starting to change and things were getting bigger. And I tried to compete, thinking of my first album, like, I gotta go up. All right, so now I gotta get Twista and Maxwell on this joint, and I'm gonna rhyme on it. At one point, you know, Jim was hot and I was on Koch Jones, and they got me a Jim Jones verse for like some crazy amount of money, and I was convinced that this was gonna be the answer to my career, and I made 4 versions of the Jim Jones where I got Nina Sky back on it. I did so much. I ended up not using the song at all. And when I listened back to that album or that moment in my career, I hate it.
Efforts to top his solo debut fell flat, but the creative frustration of that moment would provoke an important move. Back home in LA, Alchemist established a studio and an open door policy. Al's workspace would become a hub for a generation of talent, including Action Bronson, Currency, Vince Staples, and many others. But in addition to finding inspiration musically, Al would also find inspiration as an entrepreneur, prompting him to radically reinvent his business model.
That was the old studio.
oh shit, okay.
That was the whole first era.
Really? Okay.
It was over there. Yep.
Like rare chandeliers and all that kind of stuff?
All that. Covert Coup, rare chandeliers. That's kind of where all the shit started. That's when we first started like what we were calling rap camp. And then boom, we're over here.
And you guys are over here?
Over here now. We basically built it up, me and Neil. Neil kind of came up with the design, my brother.
Okay.
And it was like empty at first. It was just like a big blank canvas, and then we kind of...
You came back to LA, what, in like 2005, 2006?
Yeah.
How integral was getting this studio and creating the rap camp environment to you getting into that next phase?
Very important. It was just a great mix of people coming over, and I think it was Chuck English. I give him a lot of credit. I forget what year it was, the end of the year. New Year's, we had a party over there at the studio, and then we just had a barbecue. Action was there, and he was like cooking, and we just kept the barbecue going for a whole week. No rules, there was no A&R, there was no managers really. There was no agenda, it was free. And it was like, but we knew everybody was competitive and wanted to create. Those were the early stages of where I'm at now. And rap camp started kind of developing, and to me, that's like the whole phase 2 of my career, of like, you know, from what I built to, all right, where do I go from here? Really, the pivotal one was Covert Coup. My friend Brock was connected with Currency, brought him over. He came over to do a song, and we did 2 that day, and he wanted to drop them that night, and that blew my mind. Like, what do you mean we just recorded it? And he was like, nah, that's how I do it. I have a fan base, I feed them. And I was like, well, we just did these songs tonight. We want to drop them today. Can we mix them first? He was like, all right, well, if we're not dropping these tonight, I need you to loop up this Rick Ross beat for me so I could do a freestyle. Or it was like some beat. And I was like, deal. I looped up some instrumental. He laid a freestyle, recorded it. He posted it up immediately after he recorded it. And he was like, all right, cool. Back to it. And I'm like, damn, like he really had the pressure to drop something tonight. He was like, this is insane. I didn't get it yet. Then we did 2 songs. The next morning, he was like, these songs are too good. Let's keep working. I'm gonna stay in LA. Fast forward, we made a whole album. There was some complications why we couldn't put it out through the label he was talking to at the time. And then Currency called me and was like, yo, I just want to put it out. I'll put it out. I'm just gonna put it out for free. I'm like, for free? Like, I've never done anything like that before in my life. Like, at this point, I'm already successful making music. This is my career. And he was like, man, listen, I'll pay you. I was like, I'm not gonna take money from you. He said, well, look, doing this collab with Diamond, capsule, we can make it a Covert Coup capsule, and I'll give you the bread. And I just took a risk. I was like, fuck it, put the album out free and just sell the clothes? All right, whatever. And it worked. Boy, did it work. So the day was going by of the release and it was just selling like crazy. Towards the end of the day, they were monitoring the sales and they were like, all right, these shirts are slowing down, we're gonna cut them off. So some people show up and they still don't get it. It's how we maintain our brand. There's a technique to all this shit. Those were the early days of me seeing that. So Covert Coup changed everything in my mind, as I never thought like that in the past. I pretty much make the bulk of my shit like super early. I have a lot of different projects I'm always working on, so I might come in and finish a mix. I might come in and get to a batch of records that I've been meaning to listen to. I might finish up the beat from the night before. Sometimes I might be in here for 17 fucking hours, literally, in one chair, working. And I'm like, nobody could ever pay me to do that. That was that pivotal moment in my career where it was like, all right, am I gonna be known as the guy that did Mobb Deep and Dilated, or I started meeting this new generation of kids who grew up off that shit. Action, Mac Miller, Schoolboy Q, Earl, Damo Genesis, Danny Brown. And it was like this new batch of artists who were coming up, and I realized, damn, this is dope because they know me for what I did. So I can just be me. I don't have to chase any sound or trend, but now here's my chance. Like the burning bush, like, all right, what do I do here? Do I just like, oh, rap changing, or do I embrace them and be like, yo, let's go, let's make history? And that was like, that changed everything for me. 2010 or whatever, around that time was all those guys that really helped give me another lease on rap as a producer. Now I'm seeing the guys who, like me, never heard Mobb Deep in their life. I just know you from Schoolboy Q. Yeah, it's a blessing. The last 10 years for me has been like the most fun, and it feels like laying out some breadcrumbs, and I can't wait to see what's gonna come from this. So there's like these unforeseen elements that you're not gonna be able to prepare for, and you will not know when it happens. Do you need to do those 10,000 hours? Of course, because those hours you put in will prepare you for that unforeseen moment when you get out of the studio and you're in the world and you're, exchanging energy with other people. And there's gonna be somewhere you're at or some person, and then that moment's gonna happen where you're gonna get that break. People like you to do you. Like if I'm gonna try to make something for someone else, like someone, no one will even like me. And it was really cool once I got to that point in my career where it was like, damn, I could do what I do. And I think that's how me and Freddie worked good. Because when he came to me, he really made me feel like, man, he really is genuinely a fan like I am of him.
At what point would you say that like the current paradigm that you're in now really like came into focus for you?
Between 3 to 5 years ago. I give a lot of credit to Knowledge. You're one of my favorite producers and one of my best friends. He would play me shit all the time. And like, he had his Bandcamp page. I didn't really understand Bandcamp. Here I am, an old school guy still stuck in whatever the ways are that I know. What is Bandcamp? It was like, oh, it's like an iTunes, my own. I'm like, huh? And he'd like pull up his Bandcamp page and it'd just be like 50 artworks of covers, album covers. I'm like, what are all these? He's like, different projects. You click on one, 3 beats for, $7.99. Another one was 15 remixes for $12.99. Another one was 1 beat for. It was all these different things. I'm like, who did all this art? He's like, me. I was like jealous. Like, oh, this is fresh. I want one of these. And he kind of pushed me over to like finally doing it, to where I finally did it one day. I made a Bandcamp page and I put out a project called French Blends. And it was just instrumentals, digital only. And I sold it for like $20 or whatever it was. And the next day it was going straight to the PayPal. And I can't explain to you how it felt. This far in my career, all the money I made, all the shit I've done, this felt different. This was like, whoa, this is a main line. Like all the years of slow dripping and going through so many fucking different people. This is where it's at. This is it. Wow. This is the business of music that I could have probably figured out, what's behind door number 3 this whole time, but they'll scare you into thinking that you can't do that shit. And once I did that and realized, holy shit, I can control my career for real now. I had watched a thing years back from Trent Reznor, a case study by Trent Reznor on YouTube, and it changed my life. And basically they came up with a formula. RTB plus CWF equals success. And it was like connect with fans plus reason to buy. Our fan base is small, but they love what we do. So I immediately saw, I gotta sell shit more expensive, smaller amounts, limited. From that day forward, I started pressing my own stuff, choosing my quality, making my price points, creating a brand. For so long, I always wanted to have a reputation as Alchemist, the producer. And I'm like, all right, my beats will let you know who Alchemist is. Then I started looking at Stone's Throw and Wolf and other people like, wow, their label is like my Alchemist, the name. Like they put music out through their label and their label has a taste. If I do a label, it can have a taste also. And I started really creating products that I love, that I think are fresh, limiting them through trial and error. Every time I made a mistake, and I loved it. I loved the mistakes because I was learning from them, and it was like, okay. And it took a year or two, and after 2 years of steady releases with ALC, with vinyl, then started doing limited cassette CD, limited merch, really putting care into the shit, like not worrying about the whole fucking rap game, like whatever. I'm not in it anymore. This is a world I got. Thank God it exists. I feel like we developed this market, which is insane now. I mean, the type of money that's being made off of merch and vinyl is nuts. I don't think anyone saw it coming. There's more than one way to skin a cat, and there are so many income streams now that once you figure it out, this is the best time ever. And I've been feeling so good about it. That's how last year I was able to do the Boldy James and the Freddie Gibbs and like these albums that are now like, man, being able to create catalog under my own label, that's a dream.
What are the goals for the next few years?
My goal is to not give a shit about anybody who thinks I'm doing too much. I'm actually gonna do more. Fuck the music industry. And just be honest, like it's a headache, it's a fucking disgusting industry. And I don't feel like I'm in it anymore. So when I make beats and I produce on someone's album, yeah, I'm in the industry, there's no way around it, okay? Gotta get the lawyers, do the things, everything. But for the most part, I'm running a microbrewery now. I'm banging shit out, doing shit at my rate, tapped into a fan base that I'm directly connected through the places that I sell it, and just totally in touch with the people, and it's a perfectly working ecosystem. So in that aspect, it's like I bailed out of the industry, and it feels great.